The game was 3/4 of one. Yeah, both teams don't score. It was really. I guess I'll just, a W is a W, right? Good morning. Good morning. How y'all doing? Good.
Get along with it.
So we'll get started. Dave Petrosky is going to do our pledge and inspiration.
Good morning, everyone. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, good morning. I hope everybody had a fabulous Labor Day weekend. It was cool at 62 and cloudy here for the 4 days. It's never good for your confidence when the president announces that you're the speaker inspiration person and somebody at your table says, "Oh no." Of course, he's a Packer fan, so we'll just kind of let it go. My name's Dave Petrosky. I am, for those of you who do not know, I'm a longtime member here and a past president, 2015, 2016. And one of the things from being in the presidential seat, you get to see and you come to appreciate, and I've talked about this in the past, is, the behind the scenes people that make these meetings go. And so I told people I was not going to mention that today. So I was not going to talk about Chris Johnson sending texts out over the Labor Day weekend trying to find speakers. I'm not going to talk about Mark and Paul being there every week to greet all our guests and all our members as they come in. I'm not going to talk about Carrie Gerlicher, who helped clean up everything when we're done. I'm not going to talk about Tom Wolf and picking up all the bags that we donate. So we won't talk about that. And I'm certainly not going to talk about our current president, who makes sure that when people talk too much or too long, that he gives them the hook and they don't take it personally. So I will not be talking about that.
Good.
I'm going to follow Andrew Punch last week. If you remember Andrew, he shared some poetry, which was great. I'm not sharing poetry. But it did make me think about quotes and inspirational conversations and sayings and things like that. And so what I thought I would do is I'd like to just kind of reference a couple of quotes that I thought were kind of interesting, and some of us at some point may know who the author of them is. I've always looked at life as a voyage, mostly wonderful, sometimes frightening, but in my family and friends, I have discovered treasure more valuable than gold. Yesterdays are over my shoulder, so don't look back too long, as there's much to see waiting in front of me, and I know I just can't go wrong. Sail the main course in a simple, sturdy craft. Keep her well stocked with short stories and long laughs. Go fast enough there, but slow enough to see. Moderation seems to be the key. It takes no more time to see the good side of life than the bad side. I like that one. And the last one, I'm sure, will kind of give everybody a tip as to who the author is, who just died at the age of 76. It's those little changes in latitudes, changes in attitudes. Nothing remains quite the same. With all of our running and all of our cunning, if we couldn't laugh, we would all go insane.
Nice.
Jimmy Butler, 70s. All the things we think, say, and do. Is it the truth? I take care of all concern. Build better friendships. Will be beneficial to all concerned. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. We have several guests here today. Well, a couple of guests. We have our speaker, John Ross. Welcome, John, and his wife, Sheila, is here. Welcome, Sheila. And Rob Culligan, who's Tom Nichols' guest, and also associated with St. John's. And Jody Weinzettel, who is Laura Hotbed's returning guest. Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Great.
Good. I'd like to present a couple of name tags to our new members. Is Peter Rochelle here? Peter, come on up. Is Mimi here today?
No. Oh, no.
No Mimi.
First meeting.
Okay. How are you? Good. Nice to you. Peter, I'm going to present you with your new member tag. So hang on. Want to welcome you to the Excelsior Morning Rotary Club. Rotary is a global network of 1.4 million neighbors, friends, leaders, and problem solvers who see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves. Using the four-way test as our guide, we provide service to others, promote integrity, advance world understanding, and build goodwill. You are joining a strong club that was established in 1996. Our members have a special camaraderie. Our friendships are based on trust, and we work together to achieve common goals while we're having fun. Our hope is you will engage in our club with a can-do attitude as we work together to enrich our local and global communities by making a meaningful impact in people's lives. Welcome, Peter. Thank you. Good to see you. So before we do pass the big, we would have Mimi in review, but we'll start that next week, right? Laura, do you have anything to review on Mimi?
Well, I'll come up and can I just make a quick announcement?
Sure.
Good morning, I'm Laura Hotbed. I am the Youth Exchange Officer and I work closely with Carrie's Committee, the Youth Services Committee. So we're looking for people to join. If any of you new members, guests want to be a part of it. Mimi's had a big weekend. Today is the second day of school. She wanted to figure, I think she was just a little nervous about jostling her early morning class. So I think we're trying to figure out how that's going to work. She's got biology. She is taking forensic science. That is a class at the high school. So anyway, just sharing that. I'm gonna pass around driving schedule. I sent an email as well. Thank you for those of you who signed up for that. She does live, her first host family is over in Tamarack, which is right by Clear Springs. So super handy if any of you live in that direction. Even if you don't, we're asking that people kind of help out. It's a great way to meet her, spend a little car time with her. Our club does, I'm not gonna say require, but request that kids, our exchange students attend our meetings. So it's important that we then help get her here. I'll pass this around and raise your hand if you were excited to put jeans on today. Yes. I'm kind of fired up. So I'll start this. Please help us go around. Thank you very much.
Obviously, I didn't get the memo. I'm still hanging on to the shorts here. In terms of just any news clippings, event updates or anything like that, the only thing I can share, I did get a few of us got an email from our liaison through the Mound Rotary, Tom Venerable. We are participating through a grant, a $10,000 grant for the Eli Hart Memorial Project Playground in Mound. And this was part of a leveraging grant process amongst a number of clubs through the district. We did get word, I just wanted to so you're aware, the project has been delayed. They kind of got a bit of a curveball from the city of Mound that is going to require a different type of surface that is used for the playground over there. And so they thought they were going to break ground here within the next month. And a number of you I know had expressed interest in participating in the installation of the equipment and everything beyond just our grant contribution over there. But it looks like it's going to get reset till next spring with that. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. And with that, are there any other Pass the Pig announcements? You have another anniversary.
I had to run before Tom links up because you never want to follow him. So Lisa has on our new Oktoberfest shirt. Turn around. It's so nice. Thank you, Lisa, so much for that. So, and you're a great model. You can go anywhere. So I sent out the sign up genius last night. Sorry, I was a little late. I was kind of waiting to see if we could, it's gonna be added more to work some of the events that we're planning to, but please look at Sign Up Genius. It's September 30th. And it's a long event. It's from noon until 9, but hopefully you guys can sign up. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Tom Langsat. Many of you know my wife Pam, and tomorrow night, come to our house. So it's first Thursday. Mark will have our address, 22355 Brackets Road. If you've never been to our house, it's a long driveway up behind 2 other houses, so you'll need to park on the street and then walk up. We start at 5 o'clock. We will have, what do we say, Pam, a light supper? Yeah, there's tons of food and drink. We'll start at 5 o'clock. Last year, where's Dan? Dan was the last one to leave. What time did you leave? About 10:30? 11:30. We went to bed. We went to bed at 10:30. So I hope to see you tomorrow night. Oh, and bring spouses too. Everybody's welcome.
Morning, Kathleen Mallory. One of the other things you should have gotten in your email as well from the district. It comes from an Alexa, right? Is the district event coming up? So I am signed up. It's October 14th. It is not a football Gopher football game. So so free to come. And anyway, it's right at the Arboretum. So it's super convenient for us. It looks like a really fun event. So take a look at that and sign up. You can sign up. You can also do virtual. That doesn't sound as much fun. But there's looks like there's an what's it called, a scavenger hunt and all kinds of different things. You learn a lot about the district, about the other clubs and what the other clubs are doing. So I encourage you all to sign up.
Good morning, I'm Joan Angelis, and I've been heading up the Tree House program. For those of you who don't know it, Tree House is an organization that helps at-risk youth. These kids just have all the difficulties at home, and they have a place to go, and it's they have a regular program, and so what we do is we cook a dinner, and we have a few people at my house to cook dinner, and then another team to go to the church and help serve it. And kids are great. They'll just stop you in the hallway and say, "Hey, I just wanted to thank you for doing this." It's really great. But having said all of that, I am going to be, as we've been doing the last few years, heading south for the winter. And I wanted to announce that Sharon Heron is going to be helping out and starting to schedule meetings, not meetings, cooking times, hopefully in November. So thanks.
Sure. Bob, would you like to come up and introduce our speaker?
Well, I'm Tom Nickel. I think many of you know that I'm an avid supporter and graduate of St. John's University, and it's my pleasure and honor to introduce the Reverend Dr. John Ross. John joined our team at St. John's in 2021 as the executive director of the St. John's Bible, and he's going to share a lot today about the creation of the Bible and the work and the artistic approach and the incredible commitment over the last 25 years that St. John's has brought to the creation of the St. John's Bible. Prior to, and I think many of you may know him, prior to becoming the executive director, John spent 18 years as the senior pastor of the Wayzata Community Church. We've got a copy of the Bible here that you can take a look at afterwards. Happy to have his wife Sheila here and Rob Culligan from our institutional advancement operation as well. I'll keep my remarks short and turn it over to John now. Thank you, John.
Well, good morning. Take this thing over. Yeah.
Just share your screen.
All right. Make it easy, huh? And I'll teach you this stuff in seminary. I promise you that. All right. Let me say again, good morning. How's that look? All right, a little delay, but okay, I think we're good. Well, let me begin with a genuine word of thanks. This isn't like some
vague, general way of saying, thank you for all the good you do in the world. I mean, that's true, right? I'm a Rotarian 25 years ago, and then we started having kids. So I know about the history of Rotary and the important role it plays in the world, but I want to thank you personally. Because every other Wednesday from the middle of May to the end of August, my wife and I jump on our bikes and ride down the hill into the Commons and love that experience every week for like 1,000 different reasons. And we only missed one this past summer in the long run, and it was for a wedding in Ohio. And so I think we were excused that week. It was my niece's wedding. Are we excused? I was performing the wedding. Am I excused? Tough crowd, Tom. I know about attendance requirements at Rotary too. But really and sincerely, thank you. We made the long move from Long Lake about a year and a half ago. And part of coming here was a sense of community. And those Wednesday nights in the Commons are a real treat and a real important part of that. I want to just remind you that as a pastor and a preacher for 30 years, I'm well aware of time limits. And yet what you're going to hear in 20 to 25 minutes, and leave a little time for Q&A, is usually about a 90-minute presentation. So I'm going to go super fast, and that's by design and on purpose. I'm not nervous or anything. I just want to try to tell you as much of this story as possible because it is a huge and important, complex, and inspiring story of the St. John's Bible. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about the creation of the original manuscript, the production of the Heritage Edition. I want to talk about why it matters in the world and wrap that around a simple acronym, EPIC. And then we'll do some Q&A and have some time to meet and greet around one of the volumes that I brought with me this morning. As I mentioned, my wife Sheila, who just happens to be the Director of Development at Can Do Canines, who you've been supporting for years, right? Great organization. That's my wife Sheila. And next to her is my other boss. That's Rob Culligan, Vice President of Institutional Advancement at St. John's. Just a brief introduction of myself, 32 years, first and foremost as a husband to Sheila, secondly, father to Brady, Madeline, Anne-Marie, and Logan. And as was mentioned, I was a pastor in the United Church of Christ for 30 years and spent the last nearly 20 just across the lake up at Wayzata Community Church, which is a real honor. Hi, Joni. Nice to see you. My history with the Bible goes back to 2009 when I first saw some of the original pages in Phoenix. But 5 years later, a family in the congregation made the very generous donation of a full Heritage Edition to the church in honor of my 10th anniversary there. So there's been a real personal connection to this project for a long time. And for my last 8 years there, had this resource in the midst of our ministry there. And it was very meaningful. So to step out of a 30-year career and go, I didn't know where at the time that I left that position. My dad always told me, don't quit a job without a job, right? I did that anyway, but along came this opportunity to come alongside this project that was already 25 years underway. And it's been a real delight, a real joy, and a real privilege to do so. The mission of the St. John's Bible from the very start of things has been a threefold statement: to ignite the spiritual imagination of people around the world of all faith journeys. And part of what we're going to do in this time is unpack and understand the fullness of what that means. To ignite the spiritual imagination. We all have spiritual imaginations, whether they're tied to any religion or not, or any particular religion or not. We are spiritual beings at some level. And every time we can ignite our imagination, we have a chance to learn or experience something new. But it's important to the leaders of this institution and of this effort that it be an inclusive effort, people all around the world. And we have volumes literally placed all around the world. And again, all faith journeys is just a statement of Benedictine value of hospitality and inclusion. One of the most important things I need you to take away from today is that there are two primary expressions of the St. John's Bible. There is first and foremost the original manuscript. It is one of a kind, it's priceless. It was a project of biblical proportions, if you'll forgive the pun. And it's the first of its kind in over 500 years. Now, we think about lots of things that come out of Minnesota, right? Like just a long list of unique things about this state and this place. And we need to make sure that this project in particular ends up on that list from time to time, because no one in the world has done this in 500 years. Because with the invention of the printing press, who in their right mind would handwrite and hand illuminate the full text of the Bible? Except that there was a reason for that. And I'll unpack that in just a second. So the original manuscript, one of a kind and priceless. The second expression is what we have in the room today, is one volume of the Heritage Edition. The St. John's Bible is broken down into 7 volumes, right? If a Bible this big was bound in one volume, it would just fall apart as soon as you open it, the binding would just tear apart. So it divided into 7 volumes, which was historically over centuries, a way that people divided the Bible up so it could be in different volumes. The Heritage Edition is the only fine art replica or copy of the original in the world. Same size, same scope, all the full same content, and they only created 299 sets of 7 volumes. Why 299? I still haven't gotten a real specific example or answer, but I did learn recently that the definition of anything that's rare in the world is something that exists in a quantity less than 300. So it is a rare piece. And I think you'll learn in the next few minutes that as remarkable as the creation of the original manuscript was, the production and the place in the world of the Heritage Edition is equally significant. And that's what I want to share with you for a few minutes now. Comes out of St. John's University in Abbey in Collegeville. I usually have a slide in here showing people where not only Collegeville is on a map, but where Minnesota is on a map. My job takes me literally around the world. And it's so fun to be like right here in my own neighborhood this morning with all of you, because I don't have to show you where Collegeville is, or where St. Cloud is, or where Minnesota is. But it's important that this project be placed. The Abbey and the University up at St. John's and the College of St. Benedict's has a long history, not only of being a religious presence in the world, but to be a caring and concerned presence in the world, doing big things to answer the needs of the community. After the monks moved to that spot in the mid-1850s, the first thing they did after they just got themselves situated was ask, what does the community around us need? And the answer was education. And so St. John's University was born in the late 1850s. So where this comes from, a sense of place really matters. But also important is the who. And the story really begins in 1981 when the gentleman standing up on the scaffolding, his name is Donald Jackson. When he came to campus in 1981 as part of a calligraphers conference, calligraphers around the world were feeling threatened by, what do you think in 1981? The computer, the printer, fonts, all this technology was, sort of putting their craft and their art at risk. So they all gathered together in, of all places, Collegeville, Minnesota, from around the world. And he invited the most prominent calligrapher in the world to be their keynote speaker, and that was Donald Jackson. He was already the scribe to the House of Lords in England. He became the personal scribe to the Queen of England, literally until she just passed, and was just known around the world for his work. He's a Welshman, so his studio was in Wales, but he came to Collegeville as the keynote speaker. And as they say, from there, it's all history. This is a picture of him over an early draft of the illumination at the beginning of the book of Matthew, which is in the New Testament of the Bible. This is a photograph of a illumination that he did as a 12 or 13-year-old. He was just gifted, remarkably gifted as an artist and a calligrapher. And received awards for this even at that young an age. And it was about that time he also started to think, someday I'd like to handwrite the whole Bible. And that alone will tell you something about this individual, Donald Jackson, who's at the heart of this whole thing. Now, if you fast forward to 1995, he and Father Eric Hollis, pictured here, were at a conference in Chicago, and over lunch, Donald asked Eric, what are you guys, members of the monastic community up at St. John's Abbey, what are you going to do to mark the new millennium, the year 2000? And Eric said, I don't really know. And Donald said, I have an idea for you. And it was to commission him to handwrite and hand illuminate the entire Bible, which was centuries old tradition in the Benedictine charism. And it's something that, as I said earlier, hadn't been done since the invention of the printing press, or not long after that. So 500 years since this has been done, who in their right mind would do it? So they took about 3 years to think about that. The proposition, what kind of funds would it take? What would be the process? Who would do it? Who would decide what gets illuminated and what does not? And after 3 years, which is actually pretty quick for the Benedictines who measure time in centuries, 3 years is pretty quick to decide to do this. And they signed the commission. It's 25 years ago this year. We're celebrating that sort of at every turn this year. And they then had to spend 2 years figuring out how to do this. Now, they knew right away that Donald wouldn't be the only one doing the handwriting. It took them, in the end, 11 years to do it with 7 scribes. So there was no way Donald was going to be able to do this whole thing by himself. So he had to put together a team of 6 other scribes, and he had to teach them a brand new script. Don't call it a font in the presence of a calligrapher, because you might get a quill right between the eyes. It's a script, and Donald Jackson created a script specifically for the St. John's Bible. It's called the Jacksonian, which makes sense. So they not only had to learn this new script and get really good at it, so it would be very difficult to tell one hand from another, even side by side, but they also had to lay out the whole Bible, and that's what's pictured here. Because there were going to be 160 major illuminations in this Bible, they had to know where every page started and every page ended, precisely by the word. And so it took them 2 years just to figure out how to lay this thing out before they could even get started. And by the way, an illumination is a piece of art that includes precious metal of some form, gold or silver or platinum leaf. That's why it's called an illumination. That means literally the play of light on the page, with the turning of the page. Now, for us in this modern day with electricity and screens in all of our pockets, big deal, right? Big whoop. But in a world lit only by fire, in a dark, dimly lit room, and somebody turns a page and it starts dancing off the light of the candles, the fire. And that was remarkable. That's where that tradition began. And it continued with 160 of them to be included across all 7 volumes. 2000, they finally put quill to vellum and started with the words in the beginning. Those are the first words in the Gospel of John. And he started it on Ash Wednesday there in the scriptorium in Wales. Somebody had to figure out which texts were going to be illuminated. They had to figure out which translation of the Bible to use, right? There's hundreds of translations of the Bible. Somebody had to make a lot of decisions. This was part of a committee that met for the better part of 16 years. Talk about a church committee, ouch, 16 years. And they did an amazing job every step of the way. This is a photograph of the scribes that did the work, principally in Wales. But there was some work that was done beyond that, which then involved a lot of shipping of pages literally around the world. And these are the illuminators, the artists that did some of the artwork you'll see in a moment. They used all ancient techniques, all medieval techniques, every step of the way, in part to begin to say to the world, why does this matter? Like why would they choose ancient techniques in modern times? Because we have a lot to learn from those techniques that really could be helpful to us yet today. All the pages were done on calfskin vellum that they prepared on site in Wales, one page at a time. It was done with a very rare and ancient Chinese ink that Donald Jackson sourced in London, a little bit at a time. I think they had 142 sticks of this ink that would be ground down and mixed with egg yolk and other things to create the actual ink. And when they were done, they had 2 sticks left over. So they got really lucky in that regard. The quills, again, this is an art form in and of itself. A typical scribe would have to retreat and recut a quill many times in the course of a day. It took about a day to write one of what would be 1,150 pages of text by one of the scribes there. I'm going to show a brief portion of a brief video because I think it's helpful to see this in action. 2 things. It's an old clip because this was taken early on by the BBC that created a documentary on the process. And secondly, what you wouldn't know just to look at Donald Jackson is he's a super sarcastic and really fun and funny guy. Like you wouldn't think, oh, clerical, what a party favor kind of guy. But he really, and his first comment is pure sarcasm. So hopefully this will come through the system. Will it?
I'll give it a shot.
We'll give it a shot. If it doesn't, I'll just blast right through it. It's not gonna. All right, I'm just gonna mute that. I'll let you just watch this for a second. Because if you think about, again, handwriting, the entire Bible, you're talking about not, chapters or pages at a time. You're not even talking paragraphs or sentences at a time. You're talking about one letter at a time. And what he's saying here is that his role as a scribe, you think about what a scribe is and you imagine a bald-headed old guy writing the Bible for a group of monks, which is really what this project was at the end of the day. And as committed to the project as he was, it's also my conviction that he never took himself or the project too seriously. And that resulted in a really good outcome. So this is the illumination process, literally word at a time, with the gold leaf being applied to a glue that had already been applied to the page and then heated up with the artist's breath so it adheres to it. Again, remarkable painstaking process. He's describing here that egg yolk is a surprise ingredient because it brings out a luminosity in the colors of the ink that you don't get otherwise, but it serves a secondary purpose. And he says, have you ever tried to scrape egg yolk off the side of your plate? It's really tough, right? And it adheres and sticks to the vellum in a way that few other substances do. So here he is mixing it up for the letter that you saw him doing earlier. Just a remarkable process, exhausting to even think about doing this day in and day out for 11 years. 2011, they brought the final page to St. John's University in Abbey where they dedicated it. Tom, Rob, you guys were maybe there that day. Very big occasion, filled that Abbey church with people excited about this, what had now been 15-year process to completion. There's a gallery there now on campus. It's open to the public, normal sort of business hours. Anytime you're going up 94, want to take a break and be inspired to go see some of the original pages, you are invited to do precisely that. So the original manuscript, 23 artists, 12 theologians and scholars, 15 years, 160 illuminations, 1,150 pages, 800,000 words, 3.5 million letters. Again, first time in 500 years. And as far as we know, they only made 9 mistakes. Go back to that in a moment. Now, let me introduce you briefly to the Heritage Edition. If the original manuscript is a priceless work of art, the Heritage Edition is a pricey work of art. And it is a work of art unto itself. As I said, 299 sets were initially created, and well over half of those have been placed in locations around the world. The most important thing for you to know about the Heritage Edition is that Donald Jackson was commissioned a second time, right in the middle of creating the original manuscript. He was commissioned again by the Abbey and University to oversee every phase of this project. And so if you can imagine having the original artist looking over your shoulder while you make a copy of his work, how intense that would be, the pressure you would feel, and the demands that would be made. That's why what is sitting across the room from me right now is such a remarkable piece of art, because the original artist approved every single page and every single decision made about the materials and the process behind it. The paper itself, a remarkable single run source out of Monadnock Papers in New Hampshire, chosen specifically for its field. It's like vellum, it's very heavy, but it's uncoated. 100% cotton, uncoated paper. No printer in the world would have taken this job on. Because imagine trying to handwrite a note with a Sharpie on a paper towel, right? What happens? The ink hits the paper and it just explodes, right? They coat paper so that the ink has something to adhere to, right? But in this case, Donald Jackson said, you can't coat that paper. It won't feel like vellum. It won't feel like that calfskin vellum. So that was their first challenge. But they found a printer crazy enough to do this right up in Blaine, Minnesota, of all places, with a really rare at the time printing machine known as the Heidelberg XL 105. As they went along, they realized there were some things about the quality of the vellum that wasn't coming through on the cotton, one of which was the show through. When you put real heavy ink on vellum and apply it multiple times with gold or silver or any other material, when you turn that page over, you can see it, the show through, it bleeds through. And that's okay, it's just part of the art and the artistry of it. But it wasn't coming through, and Donald Jackson noticed it. And so with this illumination, I just show you that on one side of the page is the original illumination. And then on the reverse side, Donald Jackson made them print just super lightly. So it is identical to the original, a fabricated show through. Do you see the subtle shadow on the page there? That's the level of detail they went to make sure that even the show through was replicated precisely as the original. The illuminations I mentioned were chosen specifically to be done with gold and silver and platinum foil for the quality that it brought to the overall piece. They had to decide, are we going to just print gold or print silver with ink? They said no. So there was a whole nother process that every page went through for embossing every page, every one of which had some measure of hand treatment done to it. So no two Heritage editions are even identical. And every volume is numbered and authenticated by Donald Jackson. Again, every page, every single square inch of this thing. The last step is bookbinding. This happens out in Phoenix. We don't bind a volume until we know it's going to find a steward somewhere in the world. And so we bind maybe 10 or 12 sets at a time. Same folks every time. In fact, Violetta, pictured in the bottom right corner of the screen, has hand sewn every volume that has been bound out there at Roswell. Italian casting leather, the head and tail bands from a woman in her home in Pakistan. Again, just remarkable attention to detail every step of the way. So of those 299 Heritage editions, they are permanently housed in places, as I said, literally around the world. Colleges, universities, churches, cathedrals, hospitals and clinics, libraries, museums, retreat centers, and increasingly in people's private homes, which might sound like it would be contrary to our mission, but the fact of the matter is there's only been a few private homes that have acquired a Heritage edition who haven't already made the plan that either in a couple years or when we die, it's going to go to our church or our university or to our museum or to our library or to a retreat center. Because as a piece of art, this has value in any institution that's interested in learning and having a spiritual ignition kind of moment. Just some quick pictures of places where it is and how it gets used. I think some familiar faces in that one. Just some beautiful settings. Every place decides for itself how it's going to display it and use it. St. Martin in the Fields in London does one of the most creative things with it. A digital artist named Nina Dunn has deconstructed a bunch of the digital files of the original art and then reconstructs them in a moving projection show that is overlaid with the orchestra or the choir of St. Martin in the Fields, just right on Trafalgar Square in London. And it's a terrific experience and a great example of a creative use of this project. So just in closing, I'm just gonna blast through why I think this matters in the world today for such a time as this. Why ancient techniques for our modern times today and the value that it can hold for any person, again, regardless of faith or no faith, and which faith, or enhancing that, or extending into the whole realm of art and design. It's epic. It's ecumenical, it's participatory, it's image rich, and it's countercultural. With 4 minutes left, I'm gonna do each one in 1 minute. The ecumenical value, this ecumenical is just a fancy word of saying like all Christians and other faithful people can appreciate this thing, can gather around it. It wasn't one strain of this faith that said, this is how we're gonna do it, and it's not for anybody else. And they chose right out of the gate, the New Revised Standard Version of the Bible, which was a huge statement to the world about this Bible, because the New Revised Standard Version is the most used Bible in the world. It is the one used across traditions. And it's also the one that is considered to have the best scholarship behind it. So that was the first decision. That was a statement of ecumenism. When the Mayo Clinic down in Rochester received a Heritage Edition, they had a blessing ceremony that included leaders from multiple faith traditions. All the Abrahamic traditions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, as well as others. Ecumenical right from the start. Think about this. Donald Jackson received a papal apostolic knighthood for his work on this project. Donald Jackson is affiliated with, grew up in the Church of England, the Anglican Communion. Just think about that for a second. The Catholics honoring a member of the Church of England for his work in the world. And this fall, we're going with a group of about 50 people to present Heritage Editions to 4 of the most prominent Anglican Communion cathedrals in the world that all happen to be in the UK. That's really remarkable in the context of the history of these two traditions, you know, and what happened over the last 400 or 500 years. Just really remarkable. The second thing is, by its very nature, it's participatory. In 1991, I led a group of teenagers to the top of this mountain called Mount Mars in the Adirondack Mountains. And at the top, our Sherpa gave us a little quote on a piece of paper. And it said these words: I heard and I forgot, I saw and I remembered, but I experienced and I understood. How often do we hear things like, you're going to forget 99% of what I said this morning because you're only hearing it? We forget it. Sometimes we see things, we have a better chance of remembering them because we're typically generally very visual learners. But until we experience something, we don't have the opportunity to fully understand it. All that applies to climbing a mountain. It also applies to something like ancient scripture or art, or both when they're combined. It gives an opportunity for new understanding. It requires the participation that is so fun with this thing, especially when it comes to sharing it with children, youth, young adults. They see this without the baggage that we have as adults, and it just lights them up, and new understandings abound. It's image rich. Why does this matter? Especially in our modern age. It's estimated that at least 65% of us are visual learners. If we're stuck with only words on a page, we're in real trouble. We have to see things. We have to, and can you imagine that number is probably increased every day in this modern age with all the screens in our kids' pockets and everything, because that's all visual. So the image-rich nature of this has huge value. 160 major illuminations. This one is over on the table at the very beginning of the book. This is entitled The Genealogy of Jesus. Matthew 1 is the genealogy of Jesus. It's a real snooze fest. It's 42 generations of names only. Like so-and-so begat, so-and-so begat, so-and-so begat. Like, how do you illuminate that? Well, this is a good example of the image-rich quality of that. What the artists and the scholars decided together was, if you're going to represent the genealogy of Jesus with an image, what do you see on the screen behind me? What do you see? It's okay, there's no wrong answer. You see a family tree. For the religious folks in the room, what else do you see?
Menorah.
A menorah. Yeah. Why would they do that? Because Jesus was Jewish, right? And this is Jesus' family tree. But to be honest, they had to include the language not only in English, but also in Hebrew. You can see it there. Jesus in gold, and then in Hebrew underneath it in black. They included Abraham and Sarah, of course, because that's the end of the list. That's the root of the tree. But they were also very intentional to include Hagar, the mother of Ishmael, and include her name not only in English and Hebrew, but also in Arabic. To say this is part of our family also, the whole Muslim tradition. Same tree, same family. Now, just on the page, you would never get any of that or all of that. There's one other thing I'll show with this image. If you look in the vertical columns of what would be the candlesticks, you'll see a familiar image. You see it running up and down in the page. It's like a coil. I don't know how good the screen is. Oh yeah, you got no chance to see it there. Very subtle in the background of this is the double helix DNA strand, which was their way of saying everyone is in this picture. Every human being that has this DNA strand in them is part of this picture, part of this story, and part of this family. How important is that in our world today? Right? We're all in this together. So the image-rich quality of this just can't be overstated. And then finally, this project is countercultural. So it's ecumenical, it's participatory, it's image-rich, and it's countercultural. What do I mean by that? What's photographed here is a Torah scroll that's in a case up at St. John's University. You know, people have been handwriting religious texts for, forever. And this particular tradition in the Jewish tradition is to have a scroll on site, right? Anybody know what this is? It was in the news back in April. This is the Codex Sassoon. Does that ring a bell? 1,100-year-old handwritten manuscript of the Bible, the only complete one of its kind, sold for $38 million at Sotheby's in April. What's countercultural about this project is that it's built to last. Everything we use today, everything we build is throwaway. At best, it's recyclable. By the way, good work on the cups this summer. That's awesome, right? But eventually, even those cups, somewhere, sometime, are going to get thrown away. This is literally built to last 1,000 years or more. Any university, church, school, retreat center, private home that any of these are going into, these are going to outlast those by hundreds and hundreds of years under just normal care and maintenance, heating and air conditioning. It's countercultural also because with the margins themselves, it forces you to slow down. Carpet pages between each of the major books. It just says to us in our big hurry up culture to just slow down for a minute and read prayerfully, carefully, patiently. And then there's one last thing that's countercultural about this. And this is represented in another ancient manuscript known as the Wicked Bible. Look at verse 14. Can you read it? Thou shalt commit adultery. Whoops. They left a word out. There was a mistake. And the same was true in the St. John's Bible. They made 9 mistakes and they said, you know, we're not gonna hide from our mistakes. We're just gonna acknowledge that we made a mistake. We'll fix it to the best of our ability and then we'll treat it with some kind of humor. On the page behind me, you can see in the bottom left corner, a little bird flying up into the margin. That was where a scribe left out a line. By the time you get to the bottom of the page as a scribe, who just worked 8 hours on this thing, you can't just get white out. You can't scrape it off the page. You just have to say, hey, I made a mistake. And then show people where that mistake was supposed to be. So that bird is lifting that banner with the missing phrase up to where it belongs. Just a creative way to say, hey, made a mistake, no big deal, move on. And they found lots of fun and creative ways to show people where the mistakes were made. This lemur is one of people's favorites. This is a bumblebee with a little pulley system, dragging that verse up where it belongs. To just not take ourselves too seriously. Keep in mind the first mistake, guess where the first mistake was in the St. John's Bible? Just guess, you know. First page, Genesis 1, verse 22. Guess who made the mistake? Donald Jackson. Yeah, so there's so much more, but I'm up against the time, so I'm gonna stop. And if there is time for questions, I'm sorry if I didn't leave any. But I'll be hanging around over by the volume, which is up by the bar. All I would ask is you make sure your hands are clean before you touch it or turn any pages. But it's designed to be used, so come on up and see it. Thanks, everybody.
First of all, Dr. Ross, I am admired with how you squeezed 90 minutes into 30 minutes.
Sorry, a little over.
That was a very amazing story, and on behalf of our Rotary Club, we really appreciate your leadership in the community, your wife's leadership in the community. And we have made a donation to the Rotary International Foundation on your behalf.
Thank you.
So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate that.
So Tom and Langseth, and thank you guys for hosting tomorrow night. Look forward to seeing all of you at First Thursday. Rest in peace, Jimmy Buffett. Go out and celebrate with a margarita and a cheeseburger this week.